Welcome to Talking Time with Caffeine, brought to you by our sponsor today, Jonesbug Films.
Yes. I've achieved the status of the Barbenheimer, so I'll be here as that today.
Uh, so you, so you're a Barbie doll and a nuclear bomb.
No, it just means that I saw both Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Well, somebody's got it. I haven't seen either of them yet. Is it worth?
Um,
Is it worth it?
Barbie is worth it. A lot of people are saying Oppenheimer is good. I don't know. I think I'd like it better on a second viewing, personally. But yeah.
Okay. Well. Before we introduce our topic, I guess you're introduce you. Who are you? And what do you do? If you have no idea, if never been here before, who is this?
Uh, yeah, I'm just beat. I just wanted to be called the Barbenheimer, I guess. I don't know.
Right. I, Today we are going back, way back, beyond England, beyond France, beyond West Africa, to the BCE era.
Yep. Into a period where, you know, we don't actually. It's going to be a period of legend, essentially.
With a few facts here and there.
Yeah.
A little place that you might have heard of before called Rome.
Yep.
I don't think anything ever. I don't think anything ever became of them. Did, did they?
No. It got supplanted by its much more influential neighbor Reem.
But, well, so before we start, what made you want to do this series?
I watched, not watched, because it was a podcast. I was listening to a podcast, where a dude did the history of Rome, and I don't know. I think I think Roman history can be pretty interesting. And it also uh delves into some things that historians have to do to figure out what the real history is and all of that. And I think it's kind of cool, to kind of explain that kind of stuff, especially in this earlier period. Trying to figure out what actually happened when we don't really have any sources from this time.
All right. So before it was fallen, before it was an empire, before it was a republic, when it was just barely a city. Let us begin the journey of Rome.
Yep. So to begin, we've got to understand the world that uh, Rome was founded in. Um, we're just coming into a new golden age of civilization after the Bronze Age collapse. Um, the Greeks have left their dark age and are now founding new cities and, well, re-inhabiting old cities, founding new cities as well, and life is returning to normal in Greece. And because of this, overpopulation is occurring, and so uh, settlers are leaving their cities to go found colonies all across the Mediterranean, bringing Greek culture throughout this area, influencing the peoples that they meet, but also increasing trade. Um, they will be very important for the history of Rome, of course, as a lot of what the Romans do is influenced by the Greeks, especially later on. Earlier on, they're more influenced by this other culture to the north of them called the Etruscans. The Etruscans, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but I'm pretty sure we will. Yeah. One second. Yeah, the Etruscans, they are. I just want to make sure if I have a slide on the Etruscans later. I do. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Okay. The Etruscans are much more important influentially to the beginning period of Rome, while after the Punic Wars and the Romans start interacting more with mainland Greece, not just the Greek cities in southern Italy, Greek culture starts permeating uh, Roman society. And then there's the other guys, these guys called the Phoenicians from modern day Lebanon. They also spread out, mostly not because of overpopulation, but because they like trade. And they'll found a city called Carthage,
Which you
which
probably will be talking about until a few episodes in the future.
yes, they will make a cameo in today's episode, but yes, mostly um, future episodes.
So this is about what year is what time of the year is this? Give or take.
Um, this is just showing the where the colonies are
Okay.
at all times. You can see the Greeks. The Greeks make it everywhere. The Greeks make it up into the Black Sea. They get into Spain as well. A very important Greek city is Massilia on the French coast, called Marseille today. But yeah, a lot of the history coming up is Rome being a small player in between these three peoples who are much stronger than them.
Yeah, this is around the same time that I don't say the Babylonians and the Assyrians were doing their thing over in the east.
Yeah. It's actually quite interesting. The Phoenicians made all these colonies while being controlled by other powers a lot of the time. So it just kind of shows how loose the power of empire during this time kind of was. You just say, "Yeah, you're my sovereign. I'll listen to you begrudgingly."
Most of the time, as long as you paid your tax, paid your fee and stuff, and say they didn't really care what you did.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about on this page?
Nope. So this is ancient Italy. We're gonna be mostly in Latium today. We will go a little bit into Etruria, which is the home of the Etruscans. Um, just to talk about the Etruscans so that we can see how they influenced Roman society. Later on, we'll go into the other areas, but today it's just Etruria and, oh, excuse me, Latium. Campania is also kind of important for later, but the Etruscans really want to get into Campania because it's really fertile. That's where Mount Vesuvius is. That's where um, oh crap, I forgot what that. A lot of volcanic soil that makes it very, very fertile, and Latium is in the way. So the Etruscans try to uh, control Latium in order to get to Campania, and they're competing with the Greeks to try to hold that.
And this little city was in the middle in the middle.
The Tyrrhenian Sea. It's named after the Etruscans, actually.
I mean, this says this little city was in the middle.
Oh, this little city. Yes, Rome. Right. So I think the next slide.
So, are these like different regions and stuff?
These, yeah, these are different regions where So Samnium is where the Samnites are from. Umbria is where the Umbrians are from. It's just the areas in which different peoples are from, kind of, and stuff like that.
All right.
So the Etruscans, these people are really interesting because they do not speak an Indo-European language. They actually speak a language older than Indo-European. So a language that was here before Indo-European appeared. Uh, During this time, a lot of people assumed that they'd come from Anatolia, and this influences later myths when it comes to a certain city becoming the founders of uh becoming the founders of the people around here. It's not erupting all the time, and there's a lot of important minerals and stuff in the soil that comes from the ash when it settles down and there's no more eruption going on, and it, like, nitrates and stuff that make it easier for plants to grow and makes it more fertile. um this uh this connection with the East isn't real. They only get this because of contact with the Greeks, and they kind of adopt some things from the Greeks, but they're indigenous to the area.
Like renaming their gods.
Um, the Romans more do that, but yes, the Etruscans try to equate their gods with Greek gods. Um, they We're an aristocratic society based on city states, and these are the various city states that they had that were important at the time.
So,
Uh,
for those who don't know what those are, can you describe what a city state is?
uh, it's a type of country that is based solely on the city. Essentially, like they don't they don't control much else out of that. Uh, Rome starts off as a city state where uh, it rules over the city and the surrounding area, but usually has to dominate other cities around it through alliances instead of directly controlling them, kind of thing. Uh, so yeah, like the earliest kind of states, because states later on become really big, control wide areas. Um, these are little itty bitty states that don't control much and are based on certain cities. So yeah, the Etruscans were not a united people. Each one of these cities had its own government. They did cooperate with each other, and in each area in which they found cities, the cities come together to form Etruscan leagues. There was the 12 cities in Etruria, and then in the Po Valley, which is to the north. You can see it. It says the Po River right there, up by modern day Venice kind of area. Those cities were in an alliance called their own Etruscan league, and then you've got the ones down in Campania as their own Etruscan league.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the later Roman, uh, a lot of the what are these? So you know the fasces, the bundle of sticks together, and there's an axe head on the end. It was
Uh,
a it was a symbol of power. It was the symbol of holding imperium in Rome. That meant that you had the power uh, of the state. You could wield the power of the state.
oh, I think I think I might have read about that in the fiction, one of the fictional books.
Benito Mussolini harkens back to it in the name of his ideology, fascism. This originated in the Etruscans, as well as much of the regalia that was worn by the Roman kings. And in the early stage of Rome, a lot of the architecture will be more Etruscan than it will be Greek. The next one. So, we've got a problem. There's a certain event that happens in 390 BCE that destroys all of the records that Rome had of this period. But they made up stories of what happened. And they might have some rooting in reality, but
Some myths do like have most or some myths have some truth to them, just a little extended via like extended stretched out a little bit.
yeah, and a lot of the myths that we're getting from later on, and a lot of Greek writers, so they put their own Greek spin on it, and you'll kind of see, if you know a lot about Greek mythology, you'll kind of see it in the myth of Romulus and Remus. So Romulus and Remus were
They were two Vulcans that ran away from their own planet.
yes, yeah. So there was a city. The main city of the Latin people was called Alba Longa. And it was the most important city in Latium. It was ruled by this guy named Numitor. So Numitor was overthrown by his brother, Amulius, and he forced Numitor's daughter, Rhea Silvia, to become a Vestal Virgin, which means that she cannot boink anybody. Because if she boinks anybody, she gets buried alive. So, but there's a loophole. Either Mars or Hercules comes and impregnates her with Romulus and Remus. They were prophesied to kill Amulius, so they were smuggled out of the city and abandoned near the river Tiber. This is, if you know anything about Greek mythology, this is very much like normal for heroes. They'll be prophesied to kill their relative,
like Perseus and his grandfather.
yeah, and their parents are gods and stuff like that. And this is very common. While they're there, they are nurtured by a she-wolf until a shepherd arrives to take the boys in. When they grow up, the sheep herder, which I don't know how he knew this, tells them that they are the grandsons of Numitor. So they grow up, they go back to Alba Longa, they kill Amulius and put their granddaddy on the throne. But they decide that they want to found their own city. So they go down to what is today Rome. And there are these 7 hills in Rome. And there's a dispute over which hill there should be which hill the city should be founded on. So Romulus is on what's called the Palatine Hill. The Palatine Hill, and he makes a sacred ditch, which is something Etruscans do. So this is a little bit of Etruscan influence in on the story, because he builds a sacred ditch, and once this sacred ditch is made, you cannot cross it. And if you do, you have to be killed. And there was a disagreement between Romulus and Remus. Remus jumps over the ditch. Romulus has to murder his brother. And with this, Romulus brings the citizens of this new city together, where they decide what the laws were going to be, and this is the foundation of Rome, according to the oldest myth.
And that's why it's called Rome and not Reem.
Yes, thank God. Probably not, but it's a funny story. There are some addendums to this story that show up under Augustus. So Augustus claimed descent through Julius Caesar, who adopted him, and Julius Caesar claimed descent from the son of Aeneas, who was a prince of Troy. The son of Aeneas was named Ascanius, but he's also called Iulus. And you start seeing this, like, the Etruscans were thought to have come from Anatolia, which is where Troy is from. So there's this idea that the Trojans come over to the area and settle down.
The survivors of the Trojan horse.
Yes, the survivors of the Trojan War. And so Augustus, trying to claim this descent from a Ascanius, who is the founder of Alba Longa, the original major city in the area, and then also Aeneas, who is descended from, I think, Venus. So trying to further support his not royal, because he didn't want to be seen as a royal, his godly image. So a writer called Virgil, between 29 and 19 BCE, writes the Aeneid. The Aeneid essentially talks about the adventures of Aeneas and the survivors of Troy as they go around the Mediterranean looking for a new home. An interesting stop that they make is in Carthage, where Aeneas falls in love with the queen of Carthage, Dido, but he spurns her to go found a new city, and this is seen as the reason why the two cities would come to blows later on. A lot of these myths are trying to explain why things in Roman history happened. So Rome has big issues with civil wars and having internal disputes. So Romulus and Remus, Romulus has to kill Remus. Rome has a famous rivalry with Carthage. So the progenitor of Rome spurns the progenitor of Carthage, kind of thing.
And I'll come back to haunt him later, I guess.
Yes. It's foreshadowing in the story, because the Romans already know their history, and so they're looking at this as an explanation. This is why we had to destroy Carthage, because Carthage always wanted to destroy Rome. So if it wasn't us, it had to be them, kind of thing. There was another myth that mostly came from Greece. One of the Greece, there's a region called Arcadia, and according to the Greeks, they thought that a man named Evander with some Arcadians settled in Rome and named Rome after a woman that decided to like burn all the like she said, we're gonna burn all the ships so that we can't go back, and her name was Romos or something like that, and so that's why it's called Rome. So not everybody believed that they were Trojan, but
So let's put them all three together, and see what do we have? A weird history.
yeah, that's not really supported by archaeology, sadly, but yes.
So no Trojan artifacts being raised by twin wolves and burning a ship.
No.
Uh,
Yeah, they even melded those two together where the lady that Rome would be named after uh was actually a Trojan who was tired of fleeing around the Mediterranean. It was like, this is where we're settling.
and she had twin boys.
No,
Oh.
because Aeneas's son Ascanius is the progenitor of eventually Numitor. They're not that it's not immediate. There's a couple generations in between um, Aeneas and Numitor, so there's a definite split in time between the Trojans arriving and Romulus and Remus.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you need to add about this page?
Nope.
All right. Now
So
the actual facts.
yeah. So this shows the topography of the area. You've got multiple different hills with a floodplain in between that flooded regularly and was kind of swampy. So you lived on the hills. Uh, the Romans are neither Etruscan or Trojan. They are probably from the area. Uh, the Latins, the Latins who lived in this area and gave a language their name, originated in the Alban Hills where Alba Longa is, and some of them decided to come to these 7 hills and settle down here. Uh, the most important settlement was on the Palatine Hill, but each hill had their own settlement, and not they were not the same city yet. They were all their own little towns and villages, and they didn't have a government. And this probably happens at the beginning of the Iron Age, like 1000 CE kind of thing. Eventually, these these cities decide, these little towns decide to come together and become a city in a process called Synoecism. Synoecism also happened in Greece. It's a process where city states become the bigger states. For example, Athens swallows up all of the other cities in what their region called Attica, and they become the state essentially of Attica. Sparta does the same thing and becomes Lacedaemon kind of thing. Um, the name of Sparta was not actually Sparta; that was the city. Uh, the state that they ran was called Lacedaemon. Which, by the way, there's been discussion on Twitter about the Spartans, but I won't talk about that.
That'll be for different miniseries.
Yeah, just fascists being weird about Sparta, not liking that Sparta wasn't as good as they think it is.
Well,
Sorry.
Well, I can think of off topic back to Sparta. I know I'm talking about like, but I heard sometimes Sparta had more equal rights than Athens did sometimes.
Um, when it comes to women, women could own land, which is weird in Greece. However, the Spartans only allowed a very select few people be citizens, and most people were either slaves or conquered peoples.
Yeah,
So
that's true too.
yeah, there's gender equality, but there's also harsher, less equality with.
Both Athens and Sparta were were had their downsides.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just say Sparta was really flawed and is not as cool as it's depicted in most media. They actually kind of sucked, but
Well, most of Greece sucked back then, like really.
yeah. But you know, like everybody's like, "Oh, they were the greatest warriors in Greece."
Well, yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of.
and like they said the same thing about Athens. They were so democratic and stuff. They were so great, and like,
Yeah.
not really.
Only if you were an Athenian. If you were a different person, they didn't treat you very nice because, yeah.
But
Um,
again, that's a different. That'll be a future mini series. We might get to in the future
yeah.
in a few months.
So yeah, essentially, not founded by Trojans. People just decided to settle on these hills because they weren't as swampy as the lowlands, but yeah. Um, they were easily defensible. And you could stay up there while going down and farming down. Plus, this is the crossroads between two really important regions, so there's a lot of trade flowing through here, and probably spurs why the city is founded
Uh,
because of that trade. Um,
so they had the high ground.
yes, and according to the legends of the kings of Rome, it takes a while for them to even drain out the swamp and be able to live down in the valleys, but they do eventually get down there. All right, that's all I got to say about this. So, when Rome is founded, they have a king. The king what the king held all of the powers of the city, and they were the chief executive that held supreme military power and also judicial power. Um, the chief priest, they were the only ones that had the right to interpret the omens from the actions of birds, and uh, had were called pontifex because they were the mediator between the people and gods. Pontifex means bridge builder, and the popes today also hold this title. And but the kings were probably the first ones that held this title. He was the chief legislature. The Senate probably existed, but they didn't have power. They were an advisory board essentially for the king. Usually the king would be at trials. However, if he didn't want to be there, he could appoint a minor judge. But eventually he'd have to make the decision. The king was also elected, which is interesting. Uh, According to the legend, Romulus makes this when they're forming the government. Uh, the people are invested with the right to elect the king through what is called the Curiate Assembly. This is the assembly of all of the citizens, essentially. Uh, when the king died, the Senate would assemble, and appoint one of its members to be called interrex. That means between kings. And they would serve for 5 days with the goal of finding a new king. If they couldn't find a new king, they'd have to find a new interrex, and it couldn't be the same guy. It had to be a different guy. But once he found a suitable nominee, he would present the nominee to the Senate, and if the Senate agreed with it, they'd go to the Curiate Assembly. And then they would accept the nominee. At which point, they'd have to find out if the gods were fine with it. And if the gods were fine with it, you'd give the king his regalia, you'd give the king the fasces, which was the symbol of his imperium, and boom, you've got a new king of Rome. Boom. And he's got all these powers.
Priest, legislative, judge, executive.
Yeah.
So was this not like a? So this wasn't a hereditary thing.
We don't know for actual Rome, but according to the legends of the history of Rome, no. It sometimes was hereditary, but only because they just happened to be elected king, kind of thing. I usually err on most of the kings that are talked about were probably actual monarchs. They just didn't hold power as long as they did, and they didn't necessarily do the things that they did, but they're definitely imaginings of people that actually existed. But again, in 390 BCE, all of the records are destroyed, so we're kind of piecing together history from way in the future when people start talking about Rome.
Like the burning of the libraries in West Africa, all this history is destroyed.
Yeah, which is annoying. It'd be cool if a certain people didn't come in and ravage Rome. I'm not saying who, because that's a spoiler. Though it explains another enmity that the Romans had with a group of people because they didn't like them. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Next page.
So Romulus was the first king. When he killed his brother, he called the citizens to a council, which was the first Curiate Assembly, at which they decided how the city was to be governed. And each king is given the rights of establishing certain precedents in Roman society. Romulus brings Rome its institutions, essentially. So the original citizens of Rome were divided into 3 different tribes called the Ramnes, who were the Latins, local Latins, the TTAs, which were the Sabines, and the Luceres, which were the Etruscans. Now, why are there these different people? Okay, what was this? Romulus had a problem. His city's made up of men. Only men. His men need wives. So he invites the neighboring tribe ruled by a Sabine king named Titus. Titus Tatius, the king of the neighboring Sabines, who are another Latin people, but yeah. They invite them, and while they've been invited to Rome, the Romans go in and take all of the Sabine women and make them their wives.
I'm sure that went over well.
Yeah, this is a problem. So the Sabines were like, okay, we're going to declare war then. and they go in to fight. But during the battle, the Sabine women are torn between their their fathers fighting and their new husbands fighting, and they come in between them and are like, "Stop fighting!" So what occurs is these Sabines will now share power with the Romans, and so the TTAs were named after Titus Tatius, who was the king of the Sabines, and uh, this is another thing. The populace is further divided into 30 curiae, which are named after the 30 Sabine women. I can't quite yeah. Yeah. Um so the so in establishing the Senate, he also establishes the class that will be known as the patricians. So the original settlers of Rome are divided into patrician class, who are the senators and their descendants, and the equites, who are just the other people living there. Equites means horsemen because they were Romulus's horsemen.
Is that different from the later on plebiscite
The
class?
the plebeians are established by a different monarch.
Okay.
Uh, Currently, we've only got patricians and equites. So after like 37 years of rule, Romulus called the Senate together, and he miraculously disappears. Where'd he go? The people thought that uh the senators killed him. But the senators were quick on their heels and were like, no, 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 no. We didn't kill him. We promise. We saw in a vision that Romulus actually went up to Mount Olympus and became a god. So Romulus becomes Quirinus, who is the god of Rome. He's the likeness of the city itself. So Romulus never dies. He just decides to go to Mount Olympus, very similar to a different another god, demigod.
I was gonna say that was not true. Senators and possible killing the leader. That's a thing that might happen in the future.
That's a thing that happens a lot. Senators like killing people. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know if that. I don't know if that happened. That was still a thing in the modern days. Senators killing the presidents.
No, but senators die sometimes. Mitch McConnell nearly died giving a speech. You saw that?
I did not.
Oh yeah, he was giving a speech, and all of a sudden he goes, and like he just trails off, and he's just kind of staring in his face. Oh, spooky. All right, sorry. That's a sorry.
Yeah, let's not get into.
Turtle Man lives sadly, but let's go. Let's go on. Oh, let's go on. Let's go on. Yes, needs to retire. Okay. So the second king of Rome. The second king of Rome is known for being the pious king, and he gives Rome their religious institutions, and not only that, the Romans fear of the deities. The Romans have this thing where they're very scared about the gods and really, really, really want to make the gods happy. And this is a running theme throughout Roman history. And Numa Pompilius instills this in the Romans. Numa Pompilius was not related to Romulus. He was actually a Sabine. It took him a whole year to be elected king, though. But his reign, unlike Romulus, would be mostly peaceful. He would he'd
So no killing his twin brother, this guy.
no killing the twin brother. He constructs a temple to Janus, who is the I try to figure out what he's the god of like doors and what
Choices?
huh?
Choices?
No, like 1 second. Let me bring it up because I had it here. The god of doors, gates, and transitions.
Oh.
Yes. So the Temple of Janus, the doors were only meant to be closed during times of peace. If Rome was at war, the doors had to be open.
You think
This
it'd be
was huh?
usually isn't usually the other way around?
Um, I I'm only guessing here. You should probably look into it. But I'm guessing this is like the transition from our world to the next world kind of thing. And
Okay.
if you close the doors, then the soldiers or something. You should probably look it up, though.
Okay. I mean, usually at wartime, you kept the gates closed. It was going to invade, and then
yeah.
in peace, you open up. Because people can go with that as a thing. No one's conquering it.
But yeah, definitely look that up because I don't know. That was just a guess on my part. I don't know. He establishes the Pontifex Maximus and all of the other religious institutions. The Pontifex Maximus essentially is the chief religious dude. And later on, a certain Julius Caesar will be Pontifex Maximus. Um, and in Numa Pompilius's role as Pontifex Maximus, he added the months of January and February. This is why December is the 12th month and not the 10th month. It's not because of Augustus or Julius Caesar. It's because of this guy.
Janus for
Anyway,
January.
yeah. But yeah. Yeah, heck this guy. Why he ruining the thing, man? Now the 10th month is the 12th month? Man, come on. So the next guy.
Next page.
Yeah. Was Tullus Hostilius. He brings back the militarism of Romulus, and but he also lacked respect for the gods. And there's a funny thing that happens to him later on, because of that, which further enforces respect the gods, please.
Yeah. You don't piss off people who can throw lightning bolts at you or cause tidal waves.
Yeah, exactly. So the city of Albalonga, as you can see, which has been the most powerful city for a long time, he destroys it and resettles all of the people of Albalonga into the population of Rome. He also constructs a new home for the Senate called the Curia Hostilia, which will be the home for the Senate for a very long time. The funniest thing that happens to Tullus is that he neglected the worship of the gods, but he falls ill, and he pleads to Jupiter, who is the Roman version of Zeus. Please, Jupiter, please assist me. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to die. And Jupiter's like, you ain't never done nothing for me. Throws a lightning bolt, burns Tullus and his house to ashes. Boom. Respect the gods, Romans. Respect the gods. So yeah. But
So where was Alba located at?
if you look at the map, if you see that area that's kind of more hilly to the
Yeah.
south of Rome, it's in there by those lakes.
Ah, all right.
So Ancus Marcius, he's the grandson of Numa, and so he continues what Numa does. He's peaceful and religious. Um, and so he does little to expand the borders of Rome, except for through diplomacy, and he founds an alliance system uh, to control the different cities around Rome instead of trying to outright conquer them. Um, he also is the one who relocates some Latins to the Aventine Hill, and these will be the ancestors of the plebeians. So now we have our three classes of Rome: the patricians, the equites, and the plebeians. Um, the equites usually are either plebeians or patricians. It just kind of depends. Um, they're just lesser nobility. Usually don't hold offices or anything. And for that, they're they're usually neglected by historians when we talk about Rome because they didn't really do much except for like be rich kind of thing. They just yeah. Um, the first bridge across the Tiber River was built by Ancus Marcius, as well as the first prison on the Capitoline Hill. Um, he'd he'd build. He'd also build the cloaca. Uh, yeah. Um, the cloaca maxima. So he drains the swamps in between the hills. That that means the forum can be. So he builds the forum in between the hills, and more economic business can happen there. Yes, cloaca maxima. He also constructs the first aqueduct as well as the port of Rome, Ostia. Uh,
I did not know the aqueducts were that early in time.
oh yeah, they're old. They are old, old, old. Um,
The very first plumbing.
uh, the plumbing is cloaca maxima. The aqueducts transport water to the city from places. So it's not really plumbing, but yeah. But yeah, he founds the city of Ostia, which now gives Rome the ability to trade throughout the Mediterranean because it's it's going to be the famous port of Rome. Yeah. So that's
So so
yeah.
so is is that via river, or are we? Is Rome attached to the ocean now?
Um, so it goes into Ostia and then probably travels upriver to Rome.
Okay.
Uh, I hope you can see it on the map. This probably doesn't help phone users, but yeah, Ostia is um just to the southwest of Rome.
I zoom in if I could, but I cannot.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Ancus Martius. So now we're going to start meeting some people with some funny names. So the ancient Roman name, they usually the most important name was the nomina. That's your family name, the gens. Um, your Julius, Pompeius, all the important names are there. That's your family name. You'd have a praenomina, which is just so for Gaius Julius Caesar, his praenomina is Gaius. Um, they'd also have praenomina like Tiberius, which means of the Tiber River. And then we usually know Roman people by their cognomina. The cognomina is usually how they distinguished between that Gaius Julius and the other Gaius Julius was through the cognomina. The cognomina was usually like a characteristic someone had. So Cicero, uh, a famous guy, that was his cognomina, and it mean chickpea, and it was uh, a lot of people try to figure out why that was his name. Uh, um, some say it's because his nose looked like a chickpea, kind of thing. Um, Caesar is another cognomina. I don't really remember what that means. You have cognomina like Maximus for a dude named Lucius Sempronius Maximus, kind of thing. Um, and these usually were given like fathers. Yes, they were very terrible at names, very very bad. I don't think you understand how many Publius Cornelius Scipios there are in Roman history. There are a lot of them because the father would be Publius Cornelius Scipio, and then they'd name their son Publius Cornelius Scipio. But if they had another son, then they would have a different name. Um, so Roman names are very confusing. Every once in a while, you get an extra cognomina. For example, with a Publius Cornelius Scipio, there's a Publius Cornelius Scipio Asina. Uh, he was called a donkey because he destroyed the navy he controlled. You also have Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, who got that name for winning the Battle of Zama against Hannibal, kind of thing. But later Roman writers didn't like this very much. They saw this as like aggrandizement, which they didn't really like very much because oh, I've got four names, I'm more important than you, kind of thing. And they really didn't like that. They saw that as one of the reasons why the Roman Republic was disintegrating, kind of thing. But that's for later. I just
I don't think the Republic has even started yet at this point, has it?
the Republic has not started yet, but that's something for later. The three names were seen as like, it's normal. It means you're just like everybody else. You're not aggrandizing yourself with extra titles like Africanus or Macedonicus or something like that. You're just a normal person, and all these people adding names to themselves is making them feel more important than others and making them think that maybe they could become king, which is a scary word to later Romans. All right, so now that we did this, we can talk about the first king that has the trinomina. Lucius Tarquinius Priscus. He was an Etruscan who fled to Rome, and he was adopted by Ancus Marcius, and so he was eventually elected king. Uh, the Tarquinii are an important family for the future of Rome, by the way. So look to his descendants. um, he doubled the size of Rome with wars against the Sabines and Etruscans, and he would also add 100 new senators from the conquered Etruscans.
So
So
they
this,
went. So they went from 3 hills to 6 hills.
no, the Seven Hills are all under Roman control. This is conquering more land, going and conquering lands to the north and to the northeast kind of thing. Because the hills have been in Roman control for a long time. Sorry, I should have. Oh shoot! I accidentally gave Ancus Marcius the Cloaca Maxima. No, this guy built the Cloaca Maxima in the Forum. Sorry,
Right.
but Ancus Marcius did build the first aqueduct. That was him. Um, Priscus also founded the Roman Games, which are very important to the Romans.
All the all the history majors will have to flail you translator, I guess.
Yeah. Um, I'm sorry I messed up. I'm sorry I messed up. Kind of thing. Yeah, 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 yeah. He's also the first. Um, he's also the first uh, Roman to ever celebrate a triumph, and so triumphs are these really interesting things. Whenever a Roman general would do some great feat of battle, he'd go back to Rome and he'd celebrate a essentially a parade to aggrandize him. This was the only time in the Republican period where a man could wear the regalia of the king, kind of thing. Like it's your day, but it's like the only time you get to be. After that, you're just a normal citizen again. Um, and him being chosen as king kind of irks a certain uh, person who is the son of Ancus Marcius, who ends up killing Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, which sets a dangerous precedent.
So this is around the time that Romans started to dislike kings. Then
This is not when they started disliking kings, but it's when this idea that the king can't be killed sort of gets shattered because of this. Ancus Marcius's son thought that he should be king and was bitter that this dude who came from Etruria and was adopted by Ancus got to be king and he didn't, so he kills him.
so his adopted brother, kind of.
Yeah, this is a bad thing. So he will be succeeded by his son-in-law, Servius Tullius. He'd build the first wall around all 7 hills. He'd also further develop the citizen classes, and um, he was the first king to do a census. In order to do this, it divided the population into 5 economic classes and into 4 urban tribes based on location. This will be important for the Republican period because this will be the tribal assembly that will elect elected officials. Um, of course, this favored the elites, though, not the lessers. You know. Um, He oversaw the construction of the Temple of Diana.
Known as Artemis in Greek.
Yep. Um, and but his another problem happened. So just as Ancus Martius had a son who thought that he should become king, a certain someone thought that someone else's relative should be king. A woman named Tullia, who, if I'm remembering correctly, is also the daughter of Servius Tullius. But yeah, his daughter is his daughter is Tullia, who's married to a man named Lucius Tarquinius Superbus.
Now, real fast, for the next page. The wall. This is the first wall inside all the future walls.
Uh, yeah, it's the first wall that surrounds the entire Seven Hills.
The smallest of all the future walls.
Yes. Um. So Tullia is able to convince her husband to kill Servius Tullius, and Lucius Tarquinius Superbus becomes the new king of Rome. He will also be the last king of Rome. He completes the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, which is the most important temple for Rome for a very long time before it burnt. I think it gets burned down in the reign of Augustus. Funnily enough,
So the last king's temple lasts until the very first emperor.
yes. Um, he secured Rome's position as the head of all of the cities in Latium. Uh, and he used violence and intimidation to control the people of Rome. And because of this, he thought that he was invincible. He would disrespect Roman customs and would disrespect the Senate. This comes back to bite him in the booty. Because he is the last king of Rome for a reason. His son, who sees his father's actions, thinks that he can just ogle this woman named Lucretia and be like, I really think she's hot. I'm going to go her. Which Lucretia didn't like very much, of course. Um,
Most women don't.
yeah, so she's the daughter of powerful Roman nobles, and she informs her relatives
Even worse.
what Sextus Tarquinius did, and then unalives herself. Because of this, it spurs four men into action. The first one is Lucius Junius Brutus, who will become one of the first consuls of Rome. The other one that would become one of the first consuls of Rome is Lucius Tarquinius Collatinus, and then Publius Valerius Poplicola and Spurius Lucretius Tricipatinus, who is, I think, the father of Lucretia. They incite a revolution and expel Tarquinius from Rome in 509 BCE, according to legend. I find this quite spurious, and so do most scholars, because it just so happens to be a year before Athens establishes its democracy. Now, the Romans were very, what's it called? Chauvinistic about their system of government, and they didn't like that maybe another people did their system of government first. So later on, they say, no, we did it a year before Athens. because we don't want them being better than us.
The original first in the YouTube comment sections.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was the first comment. Yeah. So this is the founding of the Roman Republic, and also why Rex becomes a bad word, which influences why the emperors would rule in the way they did later on. But we'll talk more about how the republic is founded and the different ways in which they try to ensure one man can't control everything in the next episode.
All right. And with that, the uh, the the legends of the kings of Rome have come to an end.
And the beginning of a new system, the republic.
All right. So so overall, what's your opinion of this time in Roman history?
uh, of course, we don't know much about it. A lot of the kings are just there to establish different traditions that the Romans hold. No, Numa Pompilius is the one who establishes their. Yep, because of the Trinomina, Eddie McCoy. Yeah. You can usually just call them by their what we would call last name. So Brutus, Collatinus, Poplicola, and Tricipatinus.
Right.
Um, Sorry, that got me off track.
So,
Um,
like I say, what are you finishing? Anybody, if anybody has any questions in chat about this time, ask them now. So, you were saying?
Numa Pompilius establishes their reverence and fear of the gods. Um, as does Tullus Hostilius in his neglecting of the gods. Romulus and Tullus Hostilius bring about their war, their oh my god, their warrior spirit essentially, stuff like that, and the different institutions that will define Rome later on come through each of the kings. So that's what they're mostly there for, especially Superbus with his flouting of power and why no one man should hold Imperium ever again, um, kind of thing, to explain why Rome is a republic.
And why they have two rulers for the longest time instead of just one?
Yes, the consuls, they split Imperium between two men for 1 year, which instead of their years being defined as what we would see, which a lot of people are like, oh, they define their years as ab urbe conditum, after the founding of the city. No, they usually were like, this is the year in which this guy and this guy were consuls. That's how they did their uh, year system.
But we'll probably talk more about that next month.
By the way, the consuls actually survive all the way into the Byzantine Empire, so
Ooh.
a very long-standing institution, but doesn't hold.
I did not know the consoles were still a thing after the emperor became a thing.
Yeah, a lot of the time the emperor would be one of the consuls, or would have a certain. It's complicated and comes down to but yeah, the consuls stay a thing. A lot of because the Roman emperors were larping as if they weren't actually kings when they were kings, kind of thing, so that they didn't get killed.
For the most part.
Yeah, like Julius Caesar.
And the third century crisis, again, thinking for later.
Yeah.
I guess there's no questions and thing. So, what a sneak peek? What do we have to look forward to next month?
The foundation of the republic. Some spiciness between the patricians and the plebeians, And a new threat coming down from the north
Ooh, the North.
that will destroy Rome.
So we're still not to the Phoenician, the Punic Wars yet.
Nope. Because I want to get all of the stuff that there's no reliable history for out of the way.
All right. So, but what year are we at right now?
509 BCE, according to legend. Probably not, though.
509. So we're about on the same time at the beginning of the Persian Empire, give or take.
Yep. Athens is becoming a republic. I mean, not a republic, a democracy. Sparta has already become the hegemon of Peloponnese. They'll even clash a little bit with Athens there for a little bit, and then Athens makes a big mistake in Anatolia.
Yep. All this
Which
stuff
is
happening
Turkey,
at the
the
same time. History is not a bubble; it is several bubbles.
By the way, if you didn't know what Anatolia was, it's modern day Turkey, so that there's no confusion.
All right. All right. So I see anything up in your channel, but you have your own channel. So
no, takes too much time to do stuff.
Yeah, next week on this channel, me and Eric will be reviewing the modern day Godzilla trilogy.
What do you think of them?
I get to watch them. I'm going to watch them this week before I review them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, all right. All right, so thanks everybody for coming. Never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. We will see you next week.